Hey everyone, welcome to the KE Report and a company update from Aztec Minerals, chatting with the president and CEO, Simon Dyakowski. Aztec Minerals just closed, I believe, its largest finance in the company's history, $10 million. It was a bought deal financing that was upsized from the initially announced $8.7 million. No warrants attached to this financing. So, Simon, talk us through. Clearly, it's a good market right now to raise money. You have just closed $10 million. How did this come together?
Yeah, hey Corey, thanks for having me on today. So it came together in basically late September. We announced initially a $5 million bought deal, no warrant financing, traditional private placement, 4-month hold. So, the terms were excellent for us. And overnight it was increased to 8.7, and then the underwriter did take their full over allotment to round the closing today off at around 10,005,000 Canadian dollars. So it's definitely the biggest financing that we've ever done. And it was almost entirely taken by institutions. So we have, as of today, a much more mature and sophisticated shareholder base for our company. And, the amount of capital that we were able to raise will now enable us to really accelerate the exploration and de-risking of our assets. In particular, right now, the focus is at Tombstone. So we now have capital to continue to drill and study the results that we've been obtaining over the past few years of the project.
So, Simon, you mentioned, yes, most of these funds going to go towards Tombstone. What does that look like in terms of the current drill program, extending it, or is this more a follow-up drill program, something we could see next year?
Yeah, well, we're still in the midst of the extended drill program that we announced before the financing. So we did in September announce an additional 5 holes, some really interesting silver and gold results in that batch. And then subsequent to that, we decided to increase the drill program from 5,000 meters to 7,500 meters. So we're still drilling that. We do now have sufficient capital to expand that again, but that would be subject to our board and technical committee and JV committee approval. So we haven't formalized anything yet in that regard, but we do have still, a couple thousand meters of our ongoing program to finish. So the drill actually came back to site yesterday from the driller's break, and we are continuing to push forward. So that's all underway, but certainly with increased or with additional positive results, we would have the ability to continue drilling. And then looking further out beyond that, we have now capital earmarked for an initial resource estimate that we are considering for the first quarter of next year. We now have capital to get going on some met work, some metallurgical study, and potentially look to grow the property footprint as well if we can. So we've got money to continue through the next 18 months, I would say at least. And at the conclusion of this drill program, if our exploration model supports it, we now have capital to continue to explore and drill and build a more robust model into the new year.
Okay, so financing taken care of. You have that runway now. Just following up on this aspect of institutional investors taking most or maybe all of this $10 million. What are you hearing from these institutional investors? They're clearly chasing all the momentum in the precious metals space, but going down to Aztec, a company that, as you said, pre-resource, but you have put a lot of drill holes in here. What are these institutions looking for?
Yeah, well, I think they really like the jurisdiction. I mean, Arizona is an excellent mining jurisdiction. The US has, overnight transformed itself into the premier place in the world, I think, to be spending exploration dollars and development dollars. The government there is extremely welcoming of that investment. So I think, one, lot of interest in Arizona in the US. And you point out at the project level, we are pre-resource, but it is a past producing mine, both open pit and underground. So I think there's, some comfort there that there was, fairly significant commercial production from Tombstone back in the 1980s. And then beyond that, 100 years ago as an underground high-grade silver mine. And then the consistency of our drilling and our hit rate has been quite impressive. I mean, we've been drilling now for 5 years, and we have come up empty-handed on at less than half a dozen holes. So I think the market and the institutions can see that there's, still very good growth potential here. And really we've been limited by capital, right? Not targets and not our model. It's just been, it's been hard to raise money up until recently. So now we have the money to go and really do a proper job here to grow the deposit, study the potential economics and de-risk it going forward. So I think those were the primary factors driving these investors to come into this financing.
So what about the balance then of getting to a resource might happen early next year, growing that resource or going through economics, but you also have all these other targets that you might want to drill on the project. So is the priority going to be on the resource and economics rather than drilling potentially new discoveries?
No, we're still pursuing both. I mean, even in the pattern that we've drilled this year, we have 12 holes in the lab, and I think five of those are, pure exploration targets outside of the main resource area. So it's a mix of both. So we have the ability now to both, infill, kind of expand at the margin of the resource area, the south and to the west, but also to go further afoot. So we're excited to get those assays back and see if the visuals that we've seen in those drill holes are corroborated by, gold, silver, metal mineralization. So we will see, but we do have the ability now to sort of go further the model with the two-pronged approach, which has always been our goal.
So Simon, how many holes are you waiting on to come back from the assay labs just from this current program?
12. So there's 12 pending. We've released 10, and we should be able to drill at least another 12 in the next shift of drilling. And then we will, take a pause and see if it'll make sense to continue to drill. And at some point, put a effective date on the drill hole database for an initial resource estimate.
How many holes do you have in total around where you would potentially put that resource out on?
Yeah, so including the holes that are in the lab, we currently have approximately 80 and with at least another 12 to come. So, we should, let's say, have 90 to 100 in the initial resource.
So then, Simon, what about Cervantes? Because Tombstone has been the driver of the company recently, at least, and with all the recent drilling. But Cervantes down in Mexico, you own 100% of this project. So what's going on down there?
Yeah, look, I mean, this is just optionality for our shareholders. We haven't drilled in a couple of years. There's obviously been some concerns about the mining law reform in Mexico, but there seem to be some indications that things are heading towards resolution on that front. So we've never had a problem getting a drill permit there in a relatively short order. Last time we went and drilled, it was post mining law reform. It only took us 6 weeks to get our drill permit. So we have been working there a little bit more quietly and less aggressively than at Tombstone. But back in May and June of this year, we did, fairly robust surface program, had some very positive results. High grade gold, silver, copper was encountered in some new targets around the main California zone target that we've focused our drilling on down there. And the takeaway from that program was to get back into the field during the dry season. So, think early 2026 and continue to prove out those expansionary drill targets. And then at that point, have an analysis of the geopolitical landscape there and, see if the market is rewarding, open pit targets down there. And, if it's a receptive market, we would be able to go and expand on that already, quite robust drill hole database that we have at California zone in relatively short order and sort of realize some value from that Mexico optionality that we have built into the stock. So it's an advantageous position to be in with two borderline advanced stage projects, both sharing that at least initial open pit heap leach style of target on them.
Oh, now that you have the cash, you do have these options. I'll be following up with you to see where this money's going to be spent and what sort of drill programs you follow up on. But first and foremost, I guess we are waiting for these other holes, the ones in the current drill program, to come back from the Tombstone project. Simon, just remind everybody the overall size of that Tombstone project, where you've drilled, and then the overall size of what the resource might be around.
So the overall size of the project is about 1,500 acres, but it has been growing steadily. We have focused the drilling primarily on the patented claims, or sorry, exclusively on the patented claims, which form the core of the property. And that's about 500 acres. And that encompasses the old contention open pit mine and the various infrastructure associated with that. And the strike length of our drilled model right now is about a kilometer and upwards of 200 meters deep and 300 meters across. So, we're getting a nice size there, footprint. In terms of a resource, I really can't guide towards that. We don't have a 43101 compliant resource and just hesitate to speculate on that without having an independent verification. But if investors are, interested, they can have a look on our presentation or website and get a feel for the continuity and the relative grade of the intercepts that we have pulled, up and down the strike length of the pit. And I think it's obvious that the mineralized structures hold together quite well along the entire strike length of the pit. So, there is a very good potential for a shallow and well mineralized body, within 20, 30 meters of the bottom of the existing pit. So we're excited to get that advanced, and that'll be the focus, right after this drilling wraps up.
All right, Simon, thanks for the update. Congratulations on closing that financing, and I'll follow up with you as we get some more drill results and even keep track of if or when that resource could be coming. If anybody has any follow-up questions for Simon, please email me, fleck@kereport.com. I'll get those addressed for you and possibly even bring those up on future interviews. Simon, thanks again for your time.
Thank you, Corey. Have a great day. Appreciate it.